26th of January, our meeting of Adult Select Committee to look at the budget monitoring month 7 and also the financial budget for 21-22. We have officers with us today which will take us through some of the reports. Please introduce yourselves as members. Everybody knows everybody, so we'll introduce whenever. We're not live streaming also, so if the public want to interact, I'm sure minutes will be available for them, reference to this meeting. Right, I'll take you straight into the agenda today. Just bear with me. So do we have any apologies for absence, Hazel, please?
No, we don't, Chair. Sorry, we do. Councillor Malcolm Lane and Councillor Roger Harris.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest, members, and any officers or in attendance, if you have, just declare them. Paul, I've got your hand up.
Yes, Chair. In terms of interest, I do some consultancy work for Practice Solutions Limited, who hold the contract for ADSS Cymru, which is the Association for Directors of Social Services in Wales. Okay,
Paul. If you feel that it's proven a problem with precautionary or any issues like that, just withdraw from the meeting and then fill in the declaration sheet as and when you can possible. Okay, speak to Hazel, we'll sort that out. Is that all right?
Yes, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Right, public open forum. I don't think we have anybody wanting to speak, Hazel, do we, this morning?
No, we don't, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 4 is budget monitoring, a scrutiny of the budget monitoring capital and revenue position at month 7, setting the context for scrutiny of the budget proposals. Okay, who is just going to run through that with us? Tyrone?
That's right, Chair. Thanks very much. I'll run you through agenda item 4, if I may. Good morning, members. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Tyrone Stokes, and I'm the Finance Manager for Social Care, Health and Safeguarding Directorate within Monmouthshire County Council. I'm here today to present the 2020-21 month 7 revenue and capital forecast outturn. If you can access the packs, I'll be taking you through the covering report, and I'll try and take you through some more of the salient points of the report. And if you like, then I can take questions after. If I take you to the recommendations of the covering report, which is section 2, and notably 2.1, and the overall deficit on the council's revenue budget of 6.43 million as at month 7. Point A explains that the non-COVID related overspend is £518,000 and the COVID related overspend is 5.91 million. 2.7 then gives you a summary on the capital outturn and details a spend of 25.3 million and use of slippage totaling 37.4 million. If I take you to section 3, which looks at the key issues surrounding month 7 forecast, sorry, and 3.10 has a table of the breakdown for the revenue outturn. If we look at the social care, health and safeguarding line, there is a predicted overspend of 1.707 million, an increase of 259,000 since month 5. However, if I explain the outturn and that relates to the adults element contained within the this selects portfolio, the overspend is shown in table 2 in 3.10, and that's an overspend of £180,000 for the adult select element of the social care and health budget. The £180,000 overspend is increased slightly since month 5 by 24,000, and the overspend is mainly in relation to the additional staff pay award, which is over and above budget by 1.75%. The pay award agreed with the unions was 2.75%. We were only budgeted for 1%, so that gives a pressure having to be funded by the adult select budget of 1.75 and not meeting the 2% staff efficiency saving as well on frontline operations. 3.15 of the budget shows the breakdown that relates to the COVID-19 pressures. For social care and health, the pressure is £177,000, but that doesn't relate to the adult select portfolio. The 177,000 relates to loss of income within our registrar's department. For the revenue budget, the adult select portfolio had budgeted savings totaling £663,000. If you want to refer to those, just for your knowledge, they would be contained within Appendix 2. But all of those savings, with the exception of renegotiating the current Semview Section 28A agreement with Health, has been achieved in full. There was also budgeted pressures totaling 1.965 million for the adult budget, all of which are detailed in Appendix 2. In relation to the capital budget, there is only one scheme for adult select, and that's the Crick Road development. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions on the construction industry, any spending year will be relating to preliminary non-construction works. I'm happy to take any questions, or if you'd like me to elaborate on anything, please by all means let me know. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Tyrone. Have we any questions, members? Show no hands. No hands have gone up. Right, I've got Martin and then Tony. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tyrone. I'm beginning to get square eyes having looked at this at CYP and now looking at it again here. But just a couple of queries. The first is on page 39 in the report, the outturn forecast at months 2, 5 and 7. And it shows a deficit increasing from 24,000 in month 2 to 180,000 in month 7. And that's obviously a huge increase. Is that mainly or totally the pandemic, or did we get something wrong? And then secondly, and this might actually be for Julie rather than for you, but on page 38 in the division variance comments for social care, health and safeguarding, it talks about the 69,000 overspend, which is largely the increased cost of care packages. And I'm just worried that at the moment, if any of our care homes went under in Monmouthshire, we would actually be faced with a huge amount of financial concern there. And do we have any sense of the risk that's involved with our care homes and their financial state at the moment? Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Grocott. If I can take the first element of your question and the increase on the adult budget, the overspend from month 2 to month 7. If I try and put that into context, we've got circa an £8 million budget for the adult division. So the overspend in relation is extremely small to the overall budget. And in terms of the overspend, it's not relating to COVID, it's non-COVID related, and is due to the over and above budgeted pay award for staff and not meeting the 2% staff efficiency for frontline operations. If I explain the 2% efficiency, salary budgets have a 2% efficiency saving taken off, but for those frontline services, they just can't keep those vacancies open, especially under the current pandemic. So that just leaves them not being able to make that small efficiency saving. In terms of the comments you mentioned with the director and the stability of the care market, at the moment now the care market is being significantly helped by the Welsh Government COVID hardship fund, which allows us to make payments to care homes for any void beds that they've got, and also gives them a £50 per week allowance as well that helps them to try and get over the COVID pandemic. In terms of the risk to us, I don't see any significant risk at the moment because the hardship fund is in place currently until the 31st of March. What we don't know is what's going to happen once we start coming out of the pandemic, what resources Welsh Government will commit to that as we start stepping out of the pandemic, because I don't think that we can go from the pandemic to whatever the new norm is without some sort of interim transition, if that makes sense, Councillor.
Martin?
Yeah, that's really helpful, Tyrone. Thanks a million.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tyrone. I've got Tony and then Louise.
Good morning, Tyrone. In the text, we have the Adult Services Division is forecasting an overspend of 69k. But that isn't really true, because the Adult Services is in fact having an overspend of 180, which is decreased by 4,000 by community care, 103,000 by commissioning, and 4,000 for resources and performance. So we have to do a little bit of adding up here to make sense of the numbers. But I noticed that in commissioning, the figure has gone from a saving of 63,000 to a saving of 103. So is there a reason at the back of this why that should be the case? And it would be convenient if it was made clear in the text that Adult Services included these three other budgets as well. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Tony. You are right. In terms of the adult select portfolio, it includes the adult budget, which is an overspend of 180. That's offset by a £4,000 underspend in community care, a £103,000 underspend in commissioning, and then a small equivalent to a community care £4,000 underspend in resources and performance. If you add all of those up, the net position is 69k over. So sorry, I should have really explained that in better detail from the outset. So I do apologise, but does that explain your query on that, Councillor?
I'm not a councillor, I'm a co-opted member.
Sorry.
It'd be interesting to know why the saving has increased on commissioning.
With commissioning, due to the pandemic, we've got a number of schemes that can't recommence. So, for example, day services, they can't recommence due to the very nature of the close proximity in one building. So we're doing a lot of outreach support for those clients. So we've just seen natural savings such as building overheads, for example. And also we've got a vacant commissioner officer post in there that's been vacant for over a year, and just plans to recruit to that. We've just been delayed slightly, which is added to the underspend within commissioning.
Okay, Tony.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Louise and then Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just two questions, please, Chair. The first question really follows on from the answer that's just given. Obviously, you know, the daycare centres aren't open in the same sense they have been before because of lockdown. And I just wondered how, if there was savings in this area to make sure that when lockdown was lifted, that these daycare centres were still sustainable. And the second question is about the capital slippage with regard to the Crick care home, and to make sure that there's going to be no problems with that in terms of the long term. Because I know at one stage we were told that there were certain deadlines that had to be met, and just to make sure that those deadlines have been extended and that it's not going to affect this provision of this new care home. Thank you.
Okay. In terms of any savings that are currently helping the budget, though, when we come on to the next agenda item set in next year's budget, we haven't taken those savings from the budget, so they will be there next year in order to facilitate the reopening of daycare centres, or whatever new provision we decide to put in its place. In terms of Crick Road, That's a partnership with Aneurin Bevan, and that's via Welsh Government funding, which Aneurin Bevan host. We have engaged with Aneurin Bevan, and we've also had confirmation from Welsh Government that those deadlines have been moved on. So the money that we get at the moment is secure for that Crick Road development. So even though there's a change in the timescale and the deadline dates have moved on, the funding is moved with it to safeguard that.
Okay, are you happy with that, Louise? Yes?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Tony, just put your hand down, mate. You've got your hand sticking up there. That's it. Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tyrone, for leading on this paper. Just a couple of questions going back to the reduced capacity to offer services, and you've obviously said about daycare services and respite. Have we had significant packages of care handed back to the authority during the last year? There'll be various reasons for that. There may be carers or family members who have been furloughed and who are at home and unable to support their loved ones. There might be issues around concerns around infection control and not having people coming in. Have we had a sizable return of packages? And the other question I was going to ask, sort of a question on detail, really. Deprivation of liberty safeguards capitalised. What's that saving in relation to the 100k? Dolls capitalised?
No, I understand, Councillor. If I take your first one, around the return of packages, at the very start of the pandemic, we did see packages being returned or clients refusing to have carers come into their own home. But that was at the very start of the pandemic, when very few people knew the full extent of what the pandemic was. When we came out of the first lockdown, or when the first lockdown started to be eased, we started seeing the return of those clients. And now that we've got the second in turn of the pandemic, we're not seeing those levels of care packages being returned back to us now. We've got the infection control is much better. We know a lot more as well about the virus. We've got the vaccination program as well, and we have got the sufficient PPE as well. And I think people are just generally used to it as well, used to working in a different way. And I suppose they're used to carers turning up now dressed in PPE. Whereas I think before it was a shock to the system. But it's just like all of us, like wearing face masks and everything, it's just become part of the normal day-to-day life now. In terms of dolls, it's deprivation of liberty safeguarding, and it's where we've got a joint safeguarding team with Aneurin Bevan and other Gwent authorities, and we all contribute into a joint team. As part of the capitalisation directive, we can capitalise certain revenue expenditure to help with the bottom line. And one of those items that we've decided to capitalise is our contribution to this dolls team. That is one of the permitted criteria for capitalising revenue expenditure.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more?
Chair, sorry if I just come in there. I'm just conscious. Councillor Grocott, did I fully answer the question around the care homes and the impact? I'm just conscious that
yes,
maybe looking back at my notes.
I think you did quite clearly, Tyrone. Many thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, Chair.
Okay. Can I just ask a question? I don't think we've got any more members asking questions on the reports, Tyrone. How many members of staff did we put on furlough at the start, Tyrone, and how many are still on furlough at the moment? Have we none at the moment? And I'm thinking about the answer you made about all the centres being closed, etc., and we've got a different way of working there. Do we have many on furlough, or has that virtually moved on now? Have we never had any on furlough?
I can only talk in relation to social care.
Yeah.
John Davis might be able to give a fuller answer, Chair, around the overall furlough of staff for the local authority. We have furloughed staff. We have still got staff on furlough. In terms of social care, those ones that are operating in a day centre, we're still providing services to those clients. It's just under a different vehicle. We're providing more remote learning, one-to-one support. For example, it could be over the telephone. So those staff are still being employed by us. In terms of ones that be furloughed in social care, there are some of our community meals staff that are being furloughed, but they are very few in numbers. But in terms of the overall furloughing of the council, that may be slightly outside of the Adult Select, but I'm sure John will be happy just to give a brief summary on that, Chair.
No, it was all to do with the portfolio that we scrutinise and look at. I was just, when you said about the centres being closed, I just wonder how them staff were carrying on with reference to their duties and trying to make that contact with the people who came to the day centres. We know is so important, and there will be there'll be other issues revolving around that. But if John wants to say anything more on that, that's fine. John.
Thanks, Chair. No, I think Tyrone's covered it quite well there, Chair, for this select portfolio. Obviously, the greater numbers in terms of staff on furlough would have been around the Mon Life and leisure consideration and services. So, Tyrone's quite correct there in terms of the impact on adult social care. So that's fine, Chair.
Okay, I got Phil with his hand up. Phil.
Yeah, just to add to that, Chair, you can only furlough in connection with income generating departments, so that very much curtails the amount that you could use furlough for. So that was just a top up to that answer.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Okay, it was just making sure that, our day centres, which are non-operational now, that the staff are being looked after as well, of course, because it may be really difficult from being in a day centre to virtually, looking after very vulnerable people out there, and their day centre is their life, to be honest with you. And they're not able to use them day centres, and our staff will find that really difficult as well. That's fine, no problem. Any more questions? Nope. Pass on our regards to the teams, would you please, Tyrone, and thanks for your budget monitoring. I'm sure we're going to go into the next one, which is one of the difficult ones. So if we want to go into that, are you going to take us through that, Phil?
No, Jonathan's going to do that. It's the Jonathan Davis show this morning.
Okay, no problem. Right, members, we're moving to the next document. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. I didn't introduce myself in the last item. Apologies for that, Chair. Jonathan Davis, acting Assistant Head of Finance at the moment for the authority. Chair, I know that the slides have been circulated alongside the agenda. Are you happy for me to take yourselves through those, just to give some context to those as a short presentation?
Yeah, as long as you try and stick to our portfolio, because I'm sure members will sit on other committees and selects, and try and steer towards what's important to this select committee. Okay.
No problem, Chair. Just bear with me 2 seconds and I'll bring it up. Can I just check everyone can see that, Chair?
Yep. Everybody
Yes.
happy with that?
Thank you.
Yep.
So good morning, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity just to give some context to the slides that have been circulated today. These cover off the main issues around the draft budget proposals that have been presented to Cabinet on the 20th of January and are now out for consultation until the 17th of February. And I know some of you have sitting on numerous committees and may have seen these slides already. So, as you say, Chair, I'll try and keep points relevant to this committee as we run through. But just to give a flavour of the overall situation and how the draft budget proposals have developed. Over the past 4 years, we've had to make significant savings from our budget. We've managed to save 22 million over the last 4 years through various efficiency savings and savings across the services that the council provides. There's been significant pressures coming on stream this year and that are impacting on the 21-22 budget, and these are for various reasons, but significantly led by the demographics, the demand pressures on our services, and also inflationary and legislative changes. Alongside this, and there's a couple of slides later that I'll touch upon, we've had an above average settlement from Welsh Government provisionally for next year. That is welcomed, and it's certainly unusual for us as an authority to have an above average settlement, but we still do remain the worst funded authority per head, and that significantly impacts on the resources we have to continue providing our services. But despite this, I think the draft proposals have looked to maintain and sustain those services that we provide, and ensure that they fit with the ongoing priorities of the council, including those set out within the winter COVID-19 plan. So, as I said, pressures are coming on stream in terms of our ageing population, increased demand for our core services, expectations on services and how those are going to change as we come out of this pandemic over the next period. And irrespective of the pandemic, we still need to ensure that offers remain relevant and appropriate to the needs of the county. So we still need to invest in services and reshape and redesign as we move forward. We've covered the funding from Welsh Government, and there's a few slides on that coming up, but it's important to note that we are currently proposing to make a one-off use of reserves of around £750,000, and that's alongside a further injection of £1 million of capitalising eligible revenue spend. So there's a significant draw on the authority's reserves within the draft budget proposals as we look to balance off those pressures coming forward. As I'm sure you'll have all seen, the Cabinet has presided over the council tax increase, and the proposed increase for 21-22 is 4.95%. The reserve funding, as I said, is at low levels, and we've been limited really in terms of how much we can use to support the budget. But as I said, we have injected a further £1 million of capital receipts and £750,000 from the council fund. In terms of the proposed council tax increase on a Band D property, that would equate to £1.31 increase per week, and that would be for Monmouthshire County Council only. That would exclude the police and community council impact. There's a slide there that shows the Band D, proposed Band D equivalent of council tax, and it just shows that Monmouthshire is slightly right to centre on that graph in terms of how the Band D equivalent equates across Wales. So just as a comparison, really, for members, this shows the two ends of the extreme, I guess, showing the chargeable dwellings and the amount of chargeable dwellings that are eligible for council tax payments. So in Monmouthshire, we can see that we collect the highest percentage of council tax as a proportion of overall funding, because we have the most significant number of properties in the Band D to Band I range, whereas at the other end of the scale, Blaenau Gwent would have the most properties in the A to D range. So, as I touched upon, the settlement from Welsh Government was above average. It was a 3.9% increase in core funding, and that goes towards meeting some of those pressures that we've touched upon, and we'll look at the specific ones for the adult services selector shortly. As we've said, the MCC still remains the worst funded authority in Wales per head, and in terms of the All Wales average, we can see here on the graph that Monmouthshire is to the extreme right here, and there's a real deficit between the average and the amount we're getting per head of population. And to further show this, if we just add in the amount of council tax that we raise and put that alongside the settlement funding, it shows there, and it might be a little small for members on the screen, but to the right hand side it shows just in that orange band that Monmouthshire collects a greater proportion, 34.4% of its funding from council tax compared to other Welsh authorities. And so just taking both settlement and council tax together, we can see there that the amount of funding per head of population falls below that Welsh average. So moving on to the draft budget proposals themselves, and this is kind of a key message here, that we are recognising in full all pay and pension related spending pressures in schools. We are recognising the demands placed on adults and social services, and Tyrone's covered off those huge issues that the providers are facing, and the support that they're needing in the current year. And as we come out of the pandemic, how those demands are going to develop and change, and they're certainly not going to go away. We are responding to the needs of the homeless and making additional provision as per Welsh Government policy that we need to provide extra support for the homeless. I think it's important to note that with the ongoing circumstances around the pandemic, we are aware that there's limited scope for frontline services to make efficiency savings, and Tyrone covered off earlier that one of those reasons for the overspend in the current year is that those efficiency savings can't be made, and we're conscious that we don't want to put those extra demands on staff in the current circumstances. So it's important to note that we are still challenging services where possible to be efficient and effective. We're not. There's certainly been a challenge process over the pressures coming forward, and we're not just accepting that those pressures can't be met in another way and just have to be funded. So there's been a significant challenge process on these coming forward. In terms of fees and charges, we've looked to limit increases in these as much as possible, just taking into account circumstances in the county and those pressures that households are under, and we're trying to maintain local services as much as possible. There's a couple of slides here about how the budget process has developed, and I'm conscious, Chair, that you want to keep this specific to adults, so I'll run through these at a fair bit of pace. We started off the budget process with a budget gap of 5.3 million for the 21-22 financial year. Pressures increased and came forward at around 10.1 million, with just proposed savings of 3.7 million included. And I think there's a couple of slides here which explains how that budget process has developed. But I think the key points to note here are that we are supporting the budget, and there's a figure towards the bottom there of £748,000 where we're bringing forward council fund reserve funding to balance off the proposed budget at the moment. As I said, there's a few slides coming up which kind of gives an overview of how the budget is split up across the authority, and members are going to be well aware of the specifics around this. So I won't go into this in detail. I know you've had the pack circulated, and a lot of you may have already seen this and can work through in your own time. But certainly if there's any questions on these, I can come back to them at the end. So as I said, there's a couple of slides here just showing the various services we provide. And if I just go through to the pressures that are coming forward, we've mentioned nearly 10.1 million of pressures. This shows the split of where those pressures are coming from. And I know Tyrone will come into the end of this presentation just to highlight those pressures that are coming forward for the adult select area. But at a headline level, those significant pressures are in the children's services area, with children with additional learning needs, funding for children that are looked after. Recycling and waste, we've got significant pressures coming through, but also some savings, which we'll come on to. And also the passenger transport unit is coming through with significant changes for various reasons there in terms of catchment changes and contract handbacks. In terms of pressures within adult social care, we've got uplifts in fees to external care providers, and that's an ongoing pressure. We're seeing that coming through this year, and that'll continue into the next financial year, and also 250,000 to deliver and address the shortfall in commission care in the USC area. As I've mentioned, there's pressures relating to support for the homeless, and in terms of the pay award, I think that's probably the other significant one to mention. We are budgeting at the moment for a 1% pay award, but the Chancellor and Welsh Government have been clear that funding will not come through in any settlement to fund pay awards. But I think it's important to note that the pay award, it works slightly differently in Wales, and some of those decisions are delegated to Wales to decide upon. So if there is going to be an increase over and above the 1% that we've budgeted, that is going to come as a further pressure as we work up into the final budget proposals in March. And just running through the savings, at a headline level, there's nearly £3.7 million worth of savings. But I think it's important to note here that a lot of these savings were from in-year decisions that we've already taken in 2021. We're using, as I said, £1 million of capital receipts to fund the costs of service reform. We are limiting some increases to fees and charges. So there's a little summary of those towards the back. And we're bringing on stream the specific grant funding. So savings particularly are limited. And like I said earlier, we don't want to put pressure on frontline services to to really make service efficiencies at a time when they're having to respond to a pandemic. There's a short list there of those savings that we're bringing forward, and as I said, Mountain House Special School closure, that was a decision already taken during 2020-21. Use of capital receipts of 1 million, and recycling waste, that's a corresponding saving to the pressure that they've been bringing forward in terms of the change in service being delivered. We have had indication in the provisional settlement that there's an increase in the social care workforce and sustainability grant from Welsh Government. At an all Wales level, that increases to 50 million, and that should provide an extra 247,000 of grant income for Monmouthshire to offset those pressures within adult social care. And there's a small service efficiency in terms of those mileage savings that we look to encapsulate from the new ways of working at the present time. So just moving on in terms of the impact of the budget proposals, these have been through the wellbeing and future generation consideration, and our performance team have produced an overall consideration on the whole budget proposals, and that's sat as part of the budget papers that you have linked to in your pack. And I think it's fair to say that the two impacts that could impact significantly on residents are the proposed increase in council tax of 4.95%, and also those moderate increases in fees and charges in line with inflation. I think the key thing to note here is the mitigations in place, and we have the council tax reduction scheme and mitigation for low earners and single person households. What we also have is the charges in domiciliary and residential care that are means tested and are capped to mitigate the impact of those on the lowest incomes. So just briefly, members, on the capital proposals, I think it's fair to say that the capital budget is being taken forward as a steady state. We're supporting the core programme and those elements that are already within the budget. We have got a significant list of pressures that sit outside of the capital programme at the moment, and that list is available in the pack. I won't go through it in detail because it's quite a considerable list, but as I said, the ongoing commitment is to develop the Abergavenny 3 to 19 Band B of the schools programme. There's an ongoing commitment to the Cardiff Capital Region City deal. We are reviewing our appetite for commercial risk in terms of the current circumstances in light of the pandemic, so that's an ongoing review. As we've heard in Month 7 report earlier, the Seven View care home replacement is being delivered on, and that remains in the budget, and work is progressing on that. So as I said, we're maintaining the core programme around property maintenance and highways. Disabled facilities grants budget remains at 900,000, so we're supporting the continued uplift in that budget, and access for all continues at 250,000. As I said, there's a list of schemes here of pressures that sit outside the budget currently. We have to have consideration of those as time progresses, because these will become more and more relevant and for consideration in terms of funding going on into the future. So just moving on finally to the key risks and uncertainties as we move forward now towards the final budget proposals in March. We've still got significant risks around the impact of the pandemic, and you'll have heard in the month 7 presentation there that Welsh Government are continuing with the hardship fund and the support that they're giving to Monmouthshire and all Welsh authorities at the moment as we move through to the end of March. What is less clear, I guess, is how that support and funding will continue into next financial year. And I think we have to be mindful that as we hopefully recover from the pandemic, that support may be turned off or start to be turned off or be supported in a different way. So that's one of the key risks for us as we move into the final budget stage. As I mentioned earlier, the other key risk, I guess, is around the pay award and how that plays through in terms of teachers and local government staff and those agreements that take place with the bodies that preside over those. So, as I said, we've got 1% modelled currently, and any increase over that would be a significant pressure on the authority.
Okay,
so
John.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, are you nearly done, or we've got a few more?
Yeah, I got one slide left after this one, Chair, if that's okay, and I'll bring Tyrone in.
That's fine, no problem.
So just over the medium term, it's very hard at the moment to look beyond 21-22. We've had a 1-year settlement from Welsh Government, and we're unclear as to what approach both national, the Chancellor and Welsh Government are going to take over the longer term as we look to restore public finances. So significant challenges for us as we move ahead. And just finally, Chair, just to note the timescales that we're working through as we work through this. As I said, the proposals, the draft budget proposals, are available for consultation now until the 17th of February, and we'll be looking to bring a final budget for consideration at the 3rd of March. Cabinet working up to the Council meeting on the 11th of March, which is the final date we can actually set a budget under the current legislation. So Chair, there's 3 more slides after this which specifically cover off those pressures and savings relating to the adult select, and Tyrone was hoping to go through those in slightly more detail with you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. Tyrone, do you want to go through them 3 slides with us?
I will, thanks, Chair. And what I'll try and do is tie this into my previous report and show it reflects the month 7 and some of the issues we had at the month 7 forecast for social care, and that specifically to the adult select portfolio. The slide that you've got in front of you, those savings total, those pressures that we've put into the budget total 1.226 million. We've got £536,000 for provider fee increases. That's for both care homes and domiciliary care providers. You will remember that I mentioned part of our overspend for month 7 is due to the in-year pay award over and above budget. That's been reflected in the 21-22 budget, and that's 198,000. You will also remember part of the overspend for adult select portfolio is frontline services where they've got staff in, the inability to meet the 2% staff efficiency saving. We're looking to remove that and add that back into the budget for next year. That totals 242,000. And at month 7, we increased the amount of hours in the USC area through a Radis contract, and that's at a cost of 250,000. So that's been reflected in next year's budget, and that totals the £1.226 million additional investment we're proposing. Can you move on? Sorry, John. Thanks. In terms of the contra to that, any savings, the savings are 326,000. If I take the largest first, being the last one around the social care workforce and sustainability grant, John already mentioned on his previous slide, and the pot for all of Wales has been increased by Welsh Government by 10 million. We've estimated or tried to model, pending official documentation and notification, that we should get an additional 247,000. So that's gone in as a saving, and £79,000 from increases in the budgeted income from fees and charges for 21-22. If I just concentrate a little bit on the fees and charges, what I've sought to do there is just, thanks John, look to increase the amount of expected budget in line with the Department of Works and Pensions notification on the increase in benefits and state retirement pension, which is 2.5%. But just to reiterate, in line with our legal obligations under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, all charges are means tested, and from that means tested outcome, people will only be charged what they can afford. For non-residential services, that is currently capped at a maximum of £100 per week. I think that's it from the slides then, John, and I'm happy to take any specific questions that relate to budgetary issues around the Adult Select portfolio, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tyrone. Right, do I have any members raising their hands for questions of either Jonathan or Tyrone? Okay, there we go. We got Tony and then Louise. Tony?
I'm just mute. Sorry. Hello, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for that. My brief is essentially to look at the needs of disabled people. So I'm honing in on the disabled facility grants. In a report given to the Adult Select on the 21st of January, it was reported that the amount going for disabled facility grants was being cut back to 600,000. That was only 6 or 7 days ago, so I'm wondering what's happened in the interim. And the other point, Ian Bakewell sent me a message 6 or 7 months ago explaining what the disabled facility grant in Monmouthshire was, and it isn't just the disabled facility grant. It includes safety at home. And the amount of money that's spent on safety at home is going up. You originally budgeted for 100,000, it's gone up to 130 already. So my question is the 900,000 definite? Is that still fixed? And how much of that is in fact the disabled facilities grant as opposed to safety in home? And then I've got a slightly wider one, which is sort of a hobby horse. And that is, as I say, I represent disabled people. And the elephant in the room this morning has been that very little has been mentioned about COVID. Now, from my point of view, COVID is splitting society down the middle in many ways. It's splitting disabled people from non-disabled, white people from BAME, old from young, male from female, rich from poor, employed from non-employed. And I'm wondering how much the county council is actually acknowledging that the fact that, for instance, the number of children who are likely to be suffering mental impairments and therefore will need further support in the future must increase. The numbers of people who will be going through transition will also be going to increase. And I wonder how much effect these changes caused by COVID are having on the distribution of the budget, because we've had very little mention of COVID within the presentations this morning. That's why. Thank you.
Okay, anybody
before
like
we answer that, Chair, do you mind doing the DFG element, John, and then I can kick in on anything that's specific in terms of the Adult Select portfolio. And then if I may, Tony, I'll try and kick in on your final item, but it would be less of a political one and more around statement of facts in terms of how that's been addressed in the budget, if I may. Is that okay, Chair?
Yes, that's fine, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tony, for the question. In terms of the DFG's budget, I know Ian's on the call as well, so may want to come in on this. But in terms of the budgetary position, The support for the 900,000 capital budget for DFGs has been within the proposals now for quite a number of years. So that continuation at that level, over and above the sort of 300,000 above the 600 that was previously in, has been supported for quite a while. I'm not sure the paper that you were referring to, Tony. I'll check on that. But yeah, just to clarify though, that the draft proposals that have gone through in terms of the budget do include the 900,000 as a base budget for DFGs. I don't know if Ian or maybe Mark wanted to come in as well, Chair.
I mean, I can add to that in respect of the approach in relation to the actual DFG element and safety at home. We try and be as flexible with that on a year-by-year basis. We work closely with social care around that split, because we know how important that safety at home is. It is for day-to-day and quick adaptations. So very crudely, it's probably around 100,000 of that budget goes to safety at home. But we can be, and we will be, completely flexible, and we take our steer from both OTs, but also care and repair in relation to the levels of expenditure. And the other thing to remember as well, that in addition to our budget, we also have Enable, which is a Welsh Government grant. Again, that helps us build in a level of flexibility around adaptations.
Sorry, Chair, you might be on mute, sorry.
Hi, Tony, sorry about that. Are you okay with that answer? Around about 100,000 on home repairs there?
Yeah, I would say that I use the Stats Wales a lot for various reports, and the figures that Monmouthshire are giving to Stats Wales are completely off the wall, and somebody needs to look at those. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, do you get the point there, everyone? Just the Stats Wales. Ian?
Yeah, we've discussed this previously with Tony, and it was related to the fact that our budget, which probably we label it just DFGs, and that's probably inappropriate. It's disabled adaptations, so it's proved to be a little bit misleading. But Tony is aware of that because me and him have sat down and discussed that.
Okay, Tony. Okay, can we have an answer on Tyrone to Tony's last point about the pandemic and building in the factors long term for the next?
By all means, Chair. I think we previously mentioned, Tony, in the month's end presentation. Jonathan has touched on it briefly in terms of us building the budget for next year. We don't know what's around the corner as we start exiting out of the pandemic and what the new level will be. In terms of addressing the pandemic, the Welsh Government COVID hardship fund has allowed us to address the pressures in the care sector market as well, and that is support across the board. So that includes younger adults. It includes younger adults with physical and mental disabilities. It also includes older adults as well, to try and help stabilise the marketplace and address those needs as we go through the pandemic. I think it's fair to say it's unprecedented as well. So it is hard as well to try and plan for what's going to happen in the future. But in terms of specifically for disabled adults, Tony, if I try and remind you of this year's budget, 2021, the local authority invested significantly to the tune of £1.044 million, and that was put totally into the adult with physical and learning disabilities budgets to make sure that we made good our commitment and our spend to support those as well. So what we've tried to do is make sure that we've addressed all of the needs of our population, and with those as well, we're not looking to discriminate or leave anybody behind. And I just hope that just assures you that we are still looking to make those kind of commitments moving forward. And also, if you look at the savings, we're not looking to save anything as well significantly in terms of the adult social care budget per se. That's the same for children as well. And that's something that Jonathan mentioned, where we are looking at the needs and the pressures of those frontline services and service delivery. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tyrone. Are you okay with that answer, Tony? Okay, thank you. I have now Louise and then Martin. Louise?
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question was about the last slide about the increase in fees for non-residential and residential care. Monmouthshire only has one care home, which is Seven View, and obviously when that's going to be replaced by Crick. So I just wondered, you mentioned about the £100 cap on the non-residential, but not about what impact this would have on the residential side. The other question connected with this is, you said there was a £100 cap. I don't quite understand this because, you know, obviously somebody could get non-residential care through social workers, or they could get it independently themselves. So I'm not quite sure how this relates, because obviously care needs, you may, for example, an elderly person may need somebody coming in 2 times a day, whereas somebody else would need them coming in maybe 3 or even 4 times a day. So I'm not quite sure how that cap operates. And obviously residential care is very expensive, and there are, you know, there is some support through the local authority, but I think some of that depends on capital or income. And perhaps you could explain what impact this will have, because in certain circumstances, you know, basically the level of care is such that it needs to be a care home as opposed to a you know, somebody coming in every so often to assist. So if you could explain those particular changes, and you know, obviously this does concern mental health because of the increase in dementia and Alzheimer's and so forth. So, and after that, perhaps I could ask another question, Chair. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody like to answer that? Tyrone?
Yeah, if I take that, Chair, I will apologise in advance if I start going into accountant speak, that sometimes I do. Please interrupt me. And it is a very complicated and comprehensive topic, charging. So if I don't fully answer your question, Councillor Brown, I'm happy that I can sit down with you separately and try and work through charging. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible and non-accountant speak. We've got the Social Services and Wellbeing Act that was introduced in 2014, and that replaced all of the charging legislation that local authorities must adhere to in 2016. So we follow the Act in terms of charging. It's all laid down by Welsh Government. Welsh Government for non-residential services, that covers care in the home or care in the community. So that's day centres and respite as well. Welsh Government have capped the maximum we can charge anybody, £100 a week. How we arrive at that, if I give a simple calculation, if someone gets, say, 2 hours a week, our hourly rate that we're looking to increase that to is £14.64. So if I roughly talk, say, £30, they go through a means tested assessment. If they assess that they can pay up to the maximum of £100, we'll charge them the lower of the £100 or the cost of the service. So if they were only getting 2 hours care a week, we won't charge them £100. We charge them the hourly rate times 2. If that person was saying again 20 hours a week, 20 times our hourly rate of £14.64 is more than £100. So we would then charge them the £100. For residential services, there is no such thing as a cap. It is based on not only their income, but it also includes their assets as well, being their dwelling as well. So their main property would be brought into consideration as well. With that, the charge could be low and they could qualify for local authority financial assistance. However, if it's deemed that they've got enough in terms of income and capital to pay for themselves, then they may not qualify for local authority financial support. But with that, there is a whole heap of criteria and examples around that. I could talk for hours on it, but I think it's better if I just keep a brief summary. But then if you want any more details, I'm happy to talk to any councillor on a one-to-one basis or do a separate presentation if that would help you.
Yeah, I think you're quite right there. It does get really sticky when you get to the nitty-gritty and the format that is set out for people applying for social care and grants, etc. I appreciate that.
It does, and that's why I haven't got a fringe to come anymore, because it does stress me out. No, I'm only joking, but it is complicated.
It is. Okay. Are you okay with that, Louise? No?
Yeah, could I just ask a further question? Because you mentioned the non-residential in terms of day centres and so forth.
Yes, I did.
But does the £100 cap also apply, you know, for example, when somebody is coming in basically to assist with getting somebody up and breakfast, and then, for example, going in the evening for helping with making tea and getting ready for bed, and those sort of side of elderly care that may be needed, but not, you don't necessarily need a care home, because obviously the day centres are something separate that people go out to and attend, possibly for a day. And I know, you know, sometimes charges are a set amount, not necessarily an hourly rate, but it is sort of like for the day centre session. So
I understand.
And also there's a distinction between social care that's provided by the local authority through our carers, and then obviously the private services that social care come through, which again they have a set hourly rate, which maybe rather than 15, maybe 20 or something like that. So it's just really for the understand. I understand the residential care things are based on income and capital, but it's just understanding this £100 cap and how it applies, because obviously this is important for local residents to understand as well. Thank you.
It is. In terms of the distinction, when we charge, there is no distinction, councillor, between whether that service was provided by the local authority or the external market. How we arrive at the charge is, as I mentioned, if someone's getting, if for ease of illustration, if I say our hourly charge is £15, it's not slightly below that, but if it makes the calculation easier. If someone was getting 1 hour a week from the local authority, 1 hour private, that's still 2 hours care. That would be charged at, say, £15 an hour. So the charge would be £30 a week. If someone's assessed and they can pay the maximum amount, it's capped at £100, we would charge them £30. If they were getting 10 hours a week, 5 from the local authority, 5 from the private sector, 10 hours at £15 would be 150. So that would be over the cap. So then is £100. Nobody will pay any more than £100 if they've come through the local authority and they've been financially assessed in terms of non-residential. That includes care in their own home, whether that's assistance, putting to bed, getting up in the morning, day centre provision is all charged as non-residential care and capped at that £100. We've got an hourly rate charge for care in their own home, and then we've got a session charge for day centre attendance.
So in other words, non-residential is not based on income or capital then?
It is, because the example I gave, if someone's gone through a means tested assessment, they'll only be charged what they can afford. But if they can afford to pay more than £100, it will be capped at £100.
Oh, I see.
So
yeah, thank you. Yeah.
it still includes the income, it still includes capital, but it doesn't include stuff like their main dwelling, because they live in the community, they still need a home. But when someone goes into residential, if that same client then has to unfortunately progress into residential or nursing care, then something like the main dwelling is then taken into consideration. And that's one of the differences between non-residential and residential, and why the charge can be more, or they may not qualify for local authority assistance, because with residential, more can be taken into consideration the means tested assessment in line with the Care Act.
That sounds different from England, because I think in England there isn't this cap as far as I know.
There are intrinsic differences between England and Wales, and sometimes when people are looking to reside and move from England into Wales, then that does create some issues that we have to point out to them, because the Welsh Care Act is different to the UK or English Act. Also, when you get clients try and engage in services with either solicitors from England or even places like Age Concern, we do have to point out to them that in Wales, the Act is different to that in England.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, it's okay, no problem at all.
Thank you, Tyrone. Right, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I could ask you about the assumption of a 1% increase in pay costs for staff. I accept that that might be covered centrally in the case of teachers, but what about all the care staff and so on? We will employ some of those directly, excuse me, but a lot will be employed by care companies who are providing the staff to fulfill our contract. Now, going back to the early days of the pandemic, when we all used to go and stand outside and clap on Thursday nights, there was a lot of talk then about how we've taken a lot of these people for granted for many years. They're putting their lives at risk, etc., etc. And when it's all over, we should acknowledge the importance of care staff and give them a decent pay increase. Not only then is it realistic to say for our own staff a 1% pay increase, but also what would be the wider impact on other budget headings if the providers of services to us increase their staff's wages by more than 1%?
If I take that first, Chair, and I can look to address that, that's specific to adult social care, if I may, Councillor Grocott. In terms of the pay award per se, Jonathan's mentioned that that's governed and the announcement by the UK Chancellor around that. So I think that's been covered off. In terms of us, we've been prudent and just put in a 1% pay award should anything be agreed locally. In terms of the external carers, that's already covered in my slide that Jonathan showed around the pressure that we've got for adult social care next year. We've got a 536k pressure for provider fees, and that's to incorporate any pay increases that private providers may give their staff counsellor. And we've got a fair fee negotiation tool that we use with the care providers, and with that we look at all issues such as pay award, and one of those indications that we look at is the increase in the national living wage. That's already been announced by the UK Chancellor. I think it was announced around October, November time, but don't nail me to the wall on the dates. And we've incorporated that in terms of our modelling, and the pressure of 536 that's already been accounted for, Councillor.
Okay, Martin.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you very much. It does concern me. And of course, another impact is that now we've left the European Union, whether we would be able to get the staff coming from Eastern Europe who used to provide many of these low-paid jobs, and whether British workers would be prepared to fill the gap at the wages that are being offered. I think we might have socially and nationally quite a problem here.
It is difficult. That's going to be more than just local. That's a national one, and we don't know how things are going to pan out. What we've tried to do with the local authority, I think, is an applaudable situation we're in, where we're trying to address as much as possible to alleviate the impact on the frontline services. And what we've done is just with the providers is try to meet that wage increase, if you like, per se. It's going to be hard for us to look into whether they got the mix of people coming in from the European Union. What we tried to look at is if they were employing people under British ruling, what would they need to contribute in terms of the wage bill, and trying to address those costs.
Okay. Tyrone, may I just ask a question on the latter part there, which you said we built into the uplift of fees of just over £500,000 there.
Yeah.
If I was a care provider watching today, I'd be thinking, they've budgeted another £500,000. Let's give everybody an extra pound or whatever it is. Are we wise to do that? Because they are businesses, aren't they? And they're not for profit or for profit. That way, they know now that we've put £500,000 in there as a contingency plan just in case. Is that wise, or am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're not, Chair. I think one of our mission statements, if you like, of the authority is to be transparent, and I think we should be open and transparent with all of our partners. And it's right that we put forward what our proposals are in terms of the budget and trying to address those issues. In terms of the providers, we have got this fair fee consultation negotiation. So we're already underway with providers, talking to them about fees. So they know that we're looking to address that with the providers, and we're trying to negotiate with them so we can both work in partnership, because it's not in our interest for any providers to hit the wall. Certainly not. But again, we have got limited financial resources we need to work within. And I think the CASEC, that I appreciate that we've had this fair fee negotiation tool now implemented for the past 10, 11 years. I think it was 2010, and it served us very well.
Okay, thanks. That's answered my question then. Right, I've got Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tyrone. I've got a few questions, so I'll ask these, and then potentially, depending on the Chair's largesse, I might be able to come back in a bit. In terms of the hardship payment going forward, and you've sort of addressed the uncertainty that's still there for the next financial year. I mean, realistically, we're in this situation for at least another year. There's obviously been a huge amount of lobbying being done at a political level. I just wondered what discussions have been done at an officer level to try and understand what that, whether it's a further additional grant for 6 months, and then a tapering off, or what that might look like. And just as an aside for the void payments that have been made thus far to residential and nursing care providers, have we seen any unintended consequences around voids with providers not accepting placements because those voids are covered? Is that an issue we're seeing in the county? In terms of COVID and potentially new packages of care in the pipeline, there's going to be potentially quite a few people who are going to need rehabilitation reablement. And at the moment, those may be in a step-down facility, so where they're recovering to assess. Have we got a sort of pipeline figure of what that might look like in terms of pressure for next year? And I'm just trying to understand the split as well, because obviously COVID a health issue. You know, it shouldn't be, in terms of rehab and reablement, it shouldn't be a pressure that falls solely on local authorities. You know, there's got to be some element of health board input into that. Is there a specific split, or is that done on, you know, in terms of the assessment process? Just trying to understand how where the health board come into, you know, in terms of their funding into understanding potential future care packages and those pressures. And in terms of the provider fees, I think you've just alluded to those discussions are ongoing. So that's a sort of a headline figure that you've looked at the minute is the 536. I know the National Commissioning Board is about to publish a paper looking at, you know, they've done some assessment work on fee uplift models across local authorities in Wales, because, you know, trying to balance the normal fee uplift with COVID is really challenging. You know, I suppose the question was, you know, those negotiations are still ongoing. Is that could it potentially increase that 536, or is that the sort of ceiling figure that we're looking at based on the model that we've got and that we work on? I'll leave it there, Chair, and hopefully we'll be able to come back and ask a few more questions shortly.
Of course you can. Tyrone?
If I allow Jonathan just to come in on the first element of Councillor Parvy's questions, and I'll come in on the rest of them if I may.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ty. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just in terms, you know, covering off the first part around the hardship fund and how that's going to progress, Councillor. I think our approach at the moment has certainly been to focus on those things that we can control. So, you know, we focused on those elements of the budget that we know and they're uncertain, but we've also got a risk register then sitting behind that, looking at those potential COVID risks and how they may be funded or not funded as we move into the next financial year. So, I mean, there's a whole host of things that we need to take consideration of, but you know, the key thing is you know, being having that engagement with Welsh Government about how that hardship fund may continue. How it may kind of develop into maybe more specific grants coming through, so moving away from a kind of claims basis to more allocation. So I think for us, you know, we're continuing to lobby at a political level, and the leaders continuing to make those strong representations. But at a local level, and your question about was around the kind of the processes we're taking behind the scenes, was, you know, we're really looking at the potential impacts, I guess, on the pandemic and how the service deliveries and demands on services may change as we come out of the pandemic. So, you know, and forgive me, I might not be able to focus specifically on adult services, but, you know, certainly, you know, the demands from residents may change significantly. You know, whether social distancing continues in some forms, we've got to make some assumptions around that. And certainly, you know, town centres and property interests, you know, we need to have a look at the usage of those over the longer term. So lots of things are in the mix, I guess, but you know, something that we're keeping a close eye on and a register behind the scenes to work all that up. So hopefully that covers off the majority of that question.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Tyrone?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If I come in on the second element, is around voids. We are making void payments on behalf of Welsh Government through the hardship fund. In terms of care homes accepting new clients into their homes, I think it's understandable that they are cautious somewhat, but they're not resistant, and they are working and engaging with us. But I can understand the caution. They certainly don't want to be in the same position they were but back in March. But we are working with them. We've got a regular forum that happens every week. I'm part of that, and I've got a commissioning colleague as well. And we talk to the care sector around the various issues and how we can support them as well to work through any issues and any concerns that they have got, and any problems as well that they encounter as well, so we can work through them jointly as well as part of a joint approach. In terms of new care packages and reablement, we have got a short-term intervention reablement policy. We have got a reablement team as well. In terms of the extra capacity, we are over-recruiting our own in-house home carers to accommodate the demand. And Health have come up with winter pressures money to help to alleviate that impact. We've also got in the budget as well the £250,000 extra investment, what I mentioned in terms of month 7, and that in a specific area within USC. And we are looking to commit extra budget next year to accommodate that additional increasing capacity that we are seeing in that one area of the business. In terms of Health's involvement, the 3 community care teams that we got that operate in the region for older people, Chepstow, Abergavenny and Monmouth, they are integrated with Health. So we've got their practitioners as well around OTs. We've got a joint integrated services partnership board as well that meet. And it is what you touched on, Councillor. The assessment process would identify that and what is a social care task and a social care responsibility from the local authority, and what is a health one, and at that stage it gets split out to make sure that everybody is meeting their own obligations around that. And the other element you mentioned comes around provider fees. In terms of the 536, that's what we've modelled in terms of our fair fee negotiations around that. I think what you alluded to was Part 9 of the Act around the pooling of residential budgets, and then one around working in partnership around a more regional fee setting process. There is a working group within Gwent, and it has discussed that, but it is some way off yet in terms of agreeing that across Gwent, and then costing the implications if Monmouthshire were to adopt that. Once we get to that juncture, before we adopt anything, we would present that back to members for scrutiny, consideration, and then agreement. And if there was a cost implication, it would have to go through the same due diligence process in terms of the budget year in which we would expect that. And again, it would come to forums like this for discussion and scrutiny.
Okay, that's great. Paul, are you happy with that? Anything else?
Can I just come back? Thanks, Tyrone, for those responses. I mean, it's just, I'm concerned that the burden of rehab and rehabilitation in relation to COVID doesn't fall disproportionately on local government. Trying to assess, particularly post-COVID syndrome, it's a complete unknown. It could take someone 6 months, it could take someone 2-3 years, and it's really important that the health takes its share of responsibility, and it doesn't fall on the shoulders of local government. We've seen the challenge with CHC and FNC. How some of those cases are decided, it's grossly unfair. I've seen not particularly in this authority, but elsewhere. But you've given me some positive noises in terms of how it's done, locally, and that is an integrated approach. But this step within uncharted territory in terms of rehab and rehabilitation around COVID. So that's my concern in terms of additional budget pressures, and not just the next financial year, but looking into the medium-term financial plan, as this is going to be, or could cost us at local government a considerable amount of money, and it's really important that we set out our stall now with health colleagues and say, look, this is a health condition. You've got to pay. You've got to pay your share. I hear what you say about using some winter pressures money to sort of seed the process and to start that and kickstart that. But it really is important that we get them around the table for future budget considerations. Thanks.
Okay, good point. Well done, Paul. That's a really good point. Tyrone, just want to round that one off, please.
There's nothing there I can wholly disagree with in terms of what the councillor mentions. We are in certainly uncharted territories here, and some of these long-term issues may take months, years to come to the forefront, but we are fully sighted on it. And in terms of the development, it's just something that we can have to make sure that we record and monitor, and then make sure that we don't lose sight of that.
Okay, thanks both. I've got Sheila, Louise, and Peter Davis wants to come in. Sheila.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say I've got one little question, but I'm so impressed with the information we received hearing. We've heard some excellent questions and points raised, and the information you passed over to us officers has been very, very helpful. I mean, this time last year when you were setting the budget, it was a totally different world, and you've done all of this, put it all together and explained it very, very well this morning. My question is just one little, how can I say, thing I'm curious about: the flexible use of capital receipts to fund service reform. I wonder if you could just give me an example of that. I mean, it's obviously one of the things that's helped this budget this year, but I know that that's something that perhaps has it been used before? Do I recall it being used last year? But that's just my question. But I just wanted to say a big thank you for all the information and all that you're doing.
Thank you, Sheila. Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I can cover that off. We've used the flexible use of capital receipts, and it's under a capitalisation directive from Welsh Government. We've used it in 2019-20 financial year, and we are budgeting to use it this year as well. The background behind it is that we are permitted to use our capital receipts to fund eligible revenue expenditure that looks to fund service reform, and where we're transforming service delivery to give efficiencies, to the authority. So we are proposing to use another £1 million of capital receipts as part of this draft budget proposals for next year. The key risk around that is that our capital receipts pot is limited. Traditionally, we've used that to support our ongoing capital pressures. So it's a limited pot, and once that's used, it's gone. So we have to be mindful of the fact that that there's a limited amount of reserve to support the capital programme, and similarly we have limited earmarked reserve to support the revenue programme. So I think we're recognising as part of these budget proposals that it is, as we've heard, an exceptional year. We can't look to frontline services to make efficiency and savings, because they're really focused on providing this response to the pandemic. So I think we're recognising within these proposals that this really is a one-off use of reserves as far as possible, but looking to support the budget where necessary, where other resources aren't available at the current time.
Okay, Sheila, happy with the answer?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask Jonathan then, on that basis then, what we're saying is to use capita monies on revenue it has to meet a certain criteria for that revenue, sorry, that capita money to be used. You just can't go and fix a pothole with revenue, with capita money. Is that correct? On a revenue budget, is that right?
That's correct, Chair. There's a strict criteria around usage of capital receipts. It's around service transformation. It's around partnership working. Sharing with regional authorities and organisations. So yeah, a very strict list of items we can use it for, Chair.
All right, thank you. I do have Louise and then Peter and then Paul wants to come back in. Louise?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. It was just really a follow-up question, and thank you for the response about the savings on non-residential care, which I think was 79k from memory, and the savings on residential care, which I understand was 68k again from memory. Was that the non-residential care, was that based on a slight increase in the hourly rate, and roughly what was the increase? And the 68k, I was thinking, how is this sum broken down, and how is it arrived at? Bearing in mind that we've only got one care home, is it a increase in fees in that area, or is it across care homes? How does the 68k, where do the savings actually break down and come from? Thank you very much.
If I just clarify the figure, it was 69k councillor, 11k was non-residential, 68k was residential, and is all related to the previous topic I was answering you about. It's all around the fees and charges, and is based on the increase that Department of Works and Pensions have announced to the state retirement and benefits of 2.5%. And we've just taken our income budgets and uplifted them by 2.5%. And that's the extra income that we put forward as a saving that we may be able to get from the charging. In terms of the residential, it doesn't relate just to our own care home. That's just people in residential care per se. So they could be in a private care home, and their placement is funded by the local authority. And the means tested assessment says that they can't pay the full charge themselves, but they have to pay a contribution towards the local authority. That's regardless whether they reside in our single residential care home or whether they're residing in a private care home. I hope that helps
so basically, the contribution will roughly go up by 2.5%.
You can't take that in isolation. Not everybody's will go up by 2.5% because it's means tested.
Oh yeah.
What I've done is looked at our income budget, and we could get an extra yield, if you like, of 2.5% because the baseline benefits and state retirement pension has gone up by 2.5%, and I've mirrored that being our lowest people getting income, if you like. If someone's on basic state retirement pension and basic benefits, the increase from the government will be 2.5%, and the means tested assessment could very well go up by 2.5%, and that's what I based my assumption on.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. It's nothing more scientific than that, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Peter Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just put my camera on and hoping that it works. Can you see me, Chair? Sorry, let me try again.
We are on at the moment.
Okay, I'm having an issue with my camera, so you may have to just put up with my dulcet tones. Just coming back to Councillor Harvey's earlier point, and Tyrone responded well to that in terms of acknowledging, I guess, the need for the local authority, or local authorities, in fact, in Wales, to work closely with health and to make sure there is obviously, the pressures falling upon us are, in circumstances of continued healthcare, that is equitably shared. But I think coming back to the points raised equally by Councillor Grocott, and I guess which centre more so around the national pay strategy, around care provision within the sector, etc. You know, I think there's a lot for us to see through, I think, in the coming months, and in terms of COVID. And I think, you know, Tyrone and Jonathan have talked to that, and in terms of how the Welsh Government's COVID Hardship Fund are looking to support local authorities and, in fact, the care sector in that regard. But I guess we acknowledge, based on where things are currently sat, at least anyway, there's a Welsh Government election taking place in May of this year. And I would certainly think, as we get up into the autumn period, both as well, with the hope that we start to come out more so of you know, some of the restrictions we're facing now, and things are starting to settle in, and certainly our focus as a council will be moving more from COVID response to COVID recovery. That recovery aspect is very important, certainly within a social care setting. But I would most certainly think that Welsh Government, coming out the back of COVID and actually post an election, would have social care very high on its agenda. And in terms of you know, the fair funding, I guess, within the sector. So, you know, that's certainly a situation, you know, that I naturally expect not just Monmouthshire, but actually local authorities in Wales to be lobbying Welsh Government hard around as we work our way up into that period of time. And clearly, and we hope that there is proper recognition and funding that comes with that, because that is going to clearly be something that's going to continue to be a pressure point. It's been a pressure point, and as Tyrone said, you know, we've managed to accommodate and absorb those pressures within social care in recent years. Clearly, we will roll our medium-term financial planning forward, and we'll have due consideration beyond what we're debating here with 22-23, you know, the years that fall beyond that. And we need to make sure, you know, on the pressures that almost certainly are either going to need to be satisfied or are going to come our way, that there is actually funding that comes in behind that. So I just wanted to sort of touch on that, because I think there's probably, you know, there's more of a dynamic here that doesn't just sit between us working with health. You know, Welsh Government has a very important role to play here in its acknowledgement of, you know, where funding gets distributed across Wales, and obviously the public sector in Wales.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Right, I have Paul and then Ruth.
Yeah, thanks, and yeah, thanks, Pete, for that. I think that was an important interjection there, particularly with the Social Care Futures white paper out. It's something that's obviously going to be picked up by the next Welsh Government after whenever the election might be at some point this year. Just in terms of service redesign, and we sort of touched on that in terms of daycare services. Is there any expectation looking forward to redesign our services? You know, that might realise us a saving, but it also might realise us an additional pressure as well. You know, moving forward out of this position. You know, daycare services, you know, whether it's for adults with learning disabilities or whatever the service we provide, you know, it might not be right in terms of infection control. So it, you know, might not be cost effective on that side, but it just might not be what, you know, what our residents want after this situation. So I just wondered if we're starting to think about service redesign around that. And another obviously key element of the budget that we scrutinise as part of the auspices of this commission, this committee, that we haven't touched on really, is homelessness. You know, again, another huge pressure, 874k. I don't know whether Ian could just touch on the new, you know, in terms of the policy update from Welsh Government, and what their expectation is going to be for the next financial year. You know, as I alluded to earlier when I asked my first lot of questions, I mean, the expectation is that this is going to be with us for another year. Is there going to be additional money coming from Welsh grant funding coming from Welsh Government to support, you know, that bid to try and keep people off the streets? you know, there will be certain individuals who won't want that support, and you know, I know, you know, Ian and his team have got people on the ground across the county, and are tapped into where those individuals are either, you know, unwilling to engage or do want to engage, and for various reasons. But if Ian, if you can just touch on, you know, the updated policy position really, and what discussions you've had in relation to Welsh Government for additional funding to cover that pressure. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, the position is consistent with previous discussions I've had with you. Welsh Government are continuing with their change in policy with regards to like eliminating rough sleeping. They want to improve the provision of temporary accommodation, the provision of permanent accommodation, the quality, the type, etc., etc. And the sentiment of the policy, I don't think anyone would disagree with, and I've not come across any dissenting voices in that regard. But that does obviously create a challenge for us as a local authority and as an area. So our demand, again, since I last spoke to the Adult Select, continues to be high. I haven't got the exact figures on me at the moment, but the last count, we had over 120 people in temporary accommodation, and we've got other people over and above that in our accommodation as well. So we've got 120 as we sit here that we need to move on, mostly high needs, a lot of complex cases, which are challenging to deal with. And the last 6 months, I suppose that the situation has been, I suppose, made more challenging because of the issues around funding. But I think the position has significantly improved, and is improving. The main approach that Welsh Government are taking, they continue to acknowledge that local authorities are experiencing difficulties. So they have their main thrust has been to uplift the housing support grant programme, which everyone will probably remember it more as the Supporting People programme. And we've got just under £700,000 extra in that programme. And we are looking to continue with the phase 2 projects that were grant funded this financial year. So Llamaya Assertive Outreach, would remember them. We've got a project with GDAS for a drugs worker, and one or two others. So we're able to keep those going, and we are going to do some. It will enable us to do some extras as well. So the key one within that at the moment is that we're looking to work with Solace to develop their current model in Chepstow to take high, medium and low young people. So that's all progressing at the moment. In addition, Welsh Government have given some assurances about hardship. I know that was mentioned earlier. So we believe that we can continue to call on Welsh Government hardship where there's additional expenditure caused by COVID. And then lastly, again, I don't know whether Peter wants to add anything, but Peter's been supporting us as a team through the budget mandate process, and I'm hoping that Cabinet will will agree to some essentially additional staffing, which is the core of our budget mandate, which for me is which will help us to, I suppose, take us to a more of a proactive position rather than a reactive stroke holding position. So yeah, I think that's the main core. And probably just to add that running alongside that, we're continuing to work with the housing associations around additional accommodation.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, on the housing side, I don't know whether Tyrone or Peter are going to pick up the service redesign issue.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can briefly pick it up first, and then I'm happy for Peter just to add anything. We've taken a conscious decision with next year's budget, 21-22, with the savings not to bring any savings from redesigning any of the frontline services. I think it would be unfair to take those valued staff who are providing frontline services and detracting away from COVID to then look at service redesign when we're not sure what the new norm is going to look like after COVID, if you like. Don't quote me on this, but services may be provided in a different way as we come out of COVID. We just don't know. The time is not right to look at that because we haven't got a crystal ball. But when the time is right, we will then look at those services, and where they do need to be redesigned, we can pick the right budget year to bring those to the attention of members when it is right time to do that. But certainly moving forward into next year, we've only taken the option to bring in small savings, and is those two areas that we mentioned. One, where we're going to increase in external funding through the grant I've already mentioned, and the small increase on savings, and we've just decided just to leave it at that rather than just overburden staff and detract away from what's more important at this present moment in time.
Okay, thanks for that, Tyrone. Okay, Paul.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Ruth.
Thank you very much, Chair. There's two things. First of all, Councillor Roger Harris has telephoned me this morning, just about a quarter of an hour ago, to say he did leave his apologies with Wendy because he has just been to have his jab. So that was no contest to where he was going to be this morning. And I'm sorry, but I shall have to leave the meeting now. But it's been very, very informative. It's been an awful lot of work for the officers, especially at the moment in time. And what with the COVID, we've had the floods, we've had the snow. And I applaud them for doing so much work in such a precious thing that we do utilise in Monmouthshire. For, you know, social care is so important, and never more so than at the moment. And I've really enjoyed listening to it, and congratulate all members of staff that have been working on this. So anyway, thank you, but I shall have to leave the meeting now. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Ruth.
I'd just like to say thanks for the councillor's kind words. I'll pass them on to frontline services. I'm just doing the easy bit, presenting the report. The ones who are really hardest hit are those frontline care staff. So I'll make sure some sort of communique goes out to those members of staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tyrone, and I shall have to leave. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Right, members, do I have any more questions? No. Could I just ask, we've touched on the portfolio, Tyrone there, and Paul stepped into the homelessness, etc., the portfolio of homelessness, and Ian's side of. There's Dave Jones there in the environmental side of it, etc., and on his portfolio. What other portfolios are we on here? Because of our budget of social care and health, we had a saving of. We were looking for savings of just under 3 million, the pressures that you're under, and you in social health have come up with savings of 326 overall on your budget. And it looks like Ian there's going to end up with his budget as well. So where are we in proportion then on all the other factors within the portfolios then? Because we have touched on more on health and care here. We have other things out there though, haven't we, as well, like carers and things like this, and the homelessness, and Dave Jones as well on his team there on track and trace and things like that. So I mean, there is a bigger picture here of more portfolios within our remit. Yes.
In terms of the adult select, this is where I may be getting things wrong, so I do apologise. The adult select portfolio I thought covered the adult social care budget, commissioning, and community care. Dave Jones, in terms of public protection, I think that comes under stronger communities, and then we've got the children's element of social care that comes under CYP select. But if I give just a brief summary, in terms of the overall directorate, we have got pressures just short of 3 million. 1.226 relates to this adult select portfolio. The remaining pressures relate to children's services and trying to address the current overspend and the pressures that were delivered in the paper to the CYP select last week. In terms of Dave Jones and public protection, I can only applaud that section. They operate on a very slim budget. I did mention it briefly in my month 7 presentation earlier. They did have COVID-related pressures in terms of lost registrar's income. But when we present the month 9 out to members, there has been a change in direction from Welsh Government, and they've now done a U-turn and decided to compensate us for that loss in income.
Okay.
So that will allow Dave Jones's small team to come within their budget. In terms of TTP, that's a Gwent-wide team that we've got for TTP, and we have got various boards, and health are the host on that. But that is firmly under control in terms of the budget management, any implications, and we are recovering all of the monies due in line with our proposals that we put forward in terms of Monmouthshire's costs in terms of operating, track, trace, and protect.
Okay. I think my main point I'm making is we do a lot of cross-cutting aspects within the selects as well, and we do tip into other things. So when we monitor budgets, i.e. our first item there, it was confusing for members because we were cross-cutting a lot of the budgets with CYP as well, and so my thing which the members gave me today was could we perhaps put a lot of numbers on these pages as well, itemize them, because when they go to the public domain, a lot of the pages aren't itemized as numbers. It's just a report. So the presentation that Jonathan gave us, it's not itemized as page 1 or down to 20. It's just a presentation. So when you do the public presentation and people ask questions, they're going to find it really difficult because they're going to have to jump backwards and forwards, whereas they haven't got pages. So I just take that as a point. That is, we found it really difficult going through our pre-meeting, jumping from one to the other because there was no page numbers, because a lot of us are putting it onto the public internet, which I have to follow on the public one, because on my screen here, it's rather difficult to have presentations put on my Monmouthshire, so I put it on my public one. I don't get the page numbers on there. So when you're doing public presentations within the budget, probably a lot of people are using telephones or laptops at home, won't identify the pages, so we've got no numbers on them. I don't know how we're going to do that. I don't know whether we can do it or not, but just a point really that Tony and other members did find it really difficult to follow. Okay, I've got Peter just wants to step in on that one. Peter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to touch on a point with regard to that, really. I mean, we've also got to understand the audience as well. You know, we need to try and distill and simplify, in fact, the messaging in and around the budget proposals. But through our website, we still make available the budget proposals in the background and provide other supporting narrative and links to members of the public. So it really works on the basis that if members of the public wish to, I guess, furnish themselves with levels of detail, and that then leads them to bringing forward questions either in advance or at the sessions themselves, they can look to do that. The purpose of the presentation itself, as I said, is just really to condense and simplify the messaging so that it gives the audience a rounded understanding of the budget proposals.
Okay. Right, okay. Everybody happy with that? Yeah, okay, thank you, Tyrone, and thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, Peter, and anybody else who's out there for all your work today. And as Ruth pointed out, and many members have said, and thank you for your hard work, frontline staff, and going back to my comments in reference to people who can't do their jobs, which they love to do in our day centres, etc., and look after people who can't do that now. They will be having it really difficult out there, not being able to do what they love doing. So hopefully we can get back to all them programs that they used to deliver for our residents and people who need them out there, and they desperately need them, and so hopefully we can get back to some more normality quite soon. Thank you, guys, and pass on our thanks to everyone.
Well, and thank you very much.
Okay,
thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Right, members, let's get back into the meeting on the other agenda items. Just can you bear with me a second? I just need to just put the format up again. I think we just need to acknowledge the minutes of the meeting, that our last meeting. Anybody, any questions on that? Can I have a proposer and a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose them, Chair.
I'll second them.
Thank you, Sheila. May I thank Louise for keeps delivering the emails to us on the meetings with the health board, etc. Can I thank you for that, Louise? That's really good. I think the Facebook meetings.
Actually told that I think you already get them, do you? Because I was forwarding some and not realising that they were already sent. So I think you probably get a double dose, actually.
Yeah, I think some of us do.
I only look at yours. And are we all happy with the diary of meetings that we have scheduled? Yes, and our next meeting. Yep.
Yeah, they're fine.
Yep. Right. Is there anything else? Because I haven't got my agenda pop up here yet. Have we anything else I need to just correct, sort out there? Or are we finished here?
Just the cabinet forward plan, Chair, to note.
Yeah, to note that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Are we okay, Hazel? Any other comments members want to make, or anything you? How do you feel members are going to interact with the presentation? Just before we finish, do you think they'd be okay if they want to go onto the internet and interact with a public consultation? Anyone?
I think they I think they should be okay, and of course, you know, there'll be other opportunities as well, won't there? So, but yeah, what's been really good this morning is the clarity that officers have been able to provide, which for me has been useful. And I guess if you're not actually directly talking with an officer, it might be hard to get that, but I think they've done their best, and having them here talking to us this morning is, as to me at least, really clarified, and I think they've done a great job this morning.
Yes, I agree with that, Martin. Yeah, any other comments?
No, just to say thank you to all the staff, as has already been said, really.
Yeah, okay. Have you Mark? Have you anything, Mark Ann? Have you anything that you want to put into the meeting today? Reference to your portfolios, etc.
No, thanks, Chair. I was really sitting in terms of the housing portfolio, but Ian's covered those questions. So thanks to Councillor Pavia in particular for raising it. But no, I'm happy that's been covered, and thanks for the feedback from members. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Right, all I could say is I'll close the meeting off. Stay safe, everyone, and I am sure many of you know people who are having vaccines, etc. So be careful. I think I have to take my father to Brecon 8 o'clock on Saturday night for his injection. So we'll have to do our bit, and that's I think when we live out in, let's say, this side of Monmouthshire, a lot of people do reside with their doctors' surgeries in Powys, and I suppose when you're in England's side as well. So there you go. It's 8 o'clock for my father, so a family member, and I know many of you will have the same thing to happen to them. So but some of us are down the list as well, so it makes us, the younger ones are down the list. Aren't we, Paul? And Hazel? So yeah, stay safe, everyone, and thanks for your time today, and it's been a really good meeting, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you,
Thanks, Simon.
everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.